moments in the Oval Office where a crisis is laid out and the president doesn't level with the American people, and it's absolutely tragic. It's tragic for Donald Trump, for the country, for the 190,000 plus people who have died. If he'd been honest and shared the truth in some form, we would be in a completely different position now. It is a monumental, catastrophic leadership failure.
A monumental, catastrophic leadership failure. That was how Bob Woodward put it this morning on Morning Joe. That if Donald Trump had not lied to the American people from the beginning, had not downplayed the virus from the beginning, had not refused to acknowledge the value of wearing a mask from the beginning, and still, as recently as last night, we would be in a different place today and tomorrow. And what a place that is today, with more than 6.5 million Americans infected, millions out of work, millions out of school, and nearly 200,000 of our fellow Americans lost forever. Joining us now, political strategist and founder of the Lincoln Project, my friend Steve Schmidt. Alexi and Tim are still here. Steve Schmidt, the Woodward tapes are, to me, one of the most interesting developments in the Trump presidency. And it's almost like confessions of a mobster. It's sort of like the final scenes of, any sort of crime show where in the end you hear him late in life confessing to why he did it. Confessing to downplaying the coronavirus while also just riffing with Bob Woodward about how it was so much like the plague, airborne, deadly, and could rip you apart.
Bob Woodward induced a confession of the greatest lie in American history, bar none. There is no equivalent. There's nothing that, frankly, comes even close. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, knew how deadly COVID-19 was, and he lied to how dangerous it was. He called it a hoax. He blamed it on the Democrats. He did everything he could to downplay this. And as a result, the United States is the epicenter of coronavirus death and suffering in the world. We have a shattered economy. There are more unemployed Americans on this day in September than on any day in September in the nation's history. The education of every kid in this country has been disrupted and ruined. And we have the American way of life that's fundamentally ended. Grandparents can't go see grandkids being born, not going to be first communions and bar mitzvahs. It's not going to be tailgates, not going to be football games. None of these things, and none of it had to be. It's important to understand this. If we had the same mortality rates that Germany did, another advanced scientific, math, medical country, we would have 140,000 fewer dead Americans. It's also very important to understand what Donald Trump talked about last night when he talked about herd immunity. Apparently, that is the plan, and we should understand it as the most immoral plan ever articulated in the history of the country by a president. What he is saying is that once, and the minimum number is 60% of the population, so about 190 million Americans are infected, which would be a minimum of 2.5 million dead Americans, more like 3 million, according to Johns Hopkins. At that point, we would collectively have a herd immunity that the virus would start to die out sometime in 2022. This is a catastrophe that was completely, totally preventable. And if anything, Bob Woodward is underplaying his description of it. It is a catastrophic leadership failure, but more than that, there's no equivalent in the country's history to it. It is the greatest malfeasance in the history of the United States.
Steve Schmidt, what is you're better at this than just about anybody in the country. What is the message that you close on around what is an umbrella of calamity. It's that he doesn't care. It's that he knew he was failing. It's that he knew he was lying about the failures, and that it's that he's choosing. And again, his affinity for herd immunity, which is what we all think he meant when he said herd mentality, would have millions of Americans dead by 2022. How do you take a message about corruption and impotence and utter failure to the country when they didn't care that he was a terrible person 4 years ago?
Well, we know that one of the things that's true is the durability and the strength of Joe Biden's lead at this point, Nicole. Donald Trump could certainly still be elected president, but this isn't 4 years ago. And the reality is the overwhelming majority of this country profoundly disapproves of the job that Donald Trump has done. And the question, like it always is for an incumbent president, is are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? And there's an incredibly small number of people who can answer that question in the affirmative. Look, the country is in obvious chaos, obvious decline. We face disasters on multiple fronts. He's a person who's divided the country. He's desecrated his office. He's weakened America globally. The allied leaders laugh at Donald Trump. We see aggressors all over the world gaining strength, gaining confidence as America is in retreat and decline. So as this comes to an end, though, right, the catastrophe we face, that we all live through, the ending of the American way of life, it's on Donald Trump, and he has no plan. The country cannot endure this for 4 more years, and that's the closing message that Joe Biden's going to have to deliver. He has to take the presidency from Donald Trump, and he has to do that by confronting Trumpism fully, squarely, directly, and honestly.
Steve Schmidt, my